Alright, I'm going to be brief because these days people's attention spans are made in China. So, every single time that you come to express yourself, whether it's by saying something or doing something, you're doing so only by the virtue of the fact that at some point in your life you had impressed upon you some information, you saw someone else doing something, you heard someone else saying something, and it caused an impression. It went into you and it pressed into your psyche and into your being, into your body. It genetically stores the information. And then at some point in the future, you know, those impressions, they find a way to express themselves. They find a way to reach the surface and reenact themselves, but through us this time, not through the people that we first picked up those behaviors from, or picked up those reflex reactions from, or those outbursts from, those words. So you realize then that, we are in a large part, and when I say we are, I'm talking about us as a construct, as an ID, as an identity, as an ego, as a mask, as a image and a story or a narrative that we tell ourselves and other people so that we can keep a coherent and consistent and meaningful and reasonable and justifiable and favorable impression about us. Because that's the world we live in. We're all stuck in the differences and dichotomizing and differentiating and comparing with others, and automatically we're always adding values along with our comparisons. Things are either better or worse, good or bad, productive or unproductive, useful or useless. It's always going up or down. So through comparison and through values exchanging, we develop these ideas of what we are, and that's how we express ourselves. When people see your expression, they see you behaving, acting, talking, they're really just seeing an echo of something which transpired before, like a ripple stone being cast in the pond many years ago. One who sees mother get hit naturally upon putting the beer bottle down with a clenched fist swings his wife, or swings it at his wife years later without thinking about it, because it's a learnt behavior. Or if you've even nothing that extreme, if you've seen fighting elsewhere and then you're suddenly thrusted into a fight out of nowhere for the first time ever, you might suddenly find yourself pulling some kind of defense maneuver out of your ass, and you're like, how the fuck did I do that? Sometimes your body just automatically reacts to save your ass. You know what I'm saying? And you ask yourself how, and it's because your body is always learning, and your mind, your perception, you perceive more than you will ever know, and then more than you'll ever actually perceive yourself perceiving. So when you enter a room, the amount of information you're absorbing and learning about everything in that room, it's a lot more than what you actually comprehend when you create a neat little finite, succinct, relevant, context-based piece of information that you're focused on at the time, because that's the thing you're seeking for whatever reason. That's the one thing that's relevant in the scene. You're not focusing on all the other stuff in the scene that's irrelevant. Your eyes go where you're aiming. But just because you're aiming this way and that, and even if it's very narrow, tunnel visioned, you are still being impressed upon by everything that happens around you. So, in large part, what we are as a construct is a collection of echoes. A collection of echoes of past experiences that, through comparison and evaluation, is determining what is the best, most appropriate, the most useful, effective, purposeful reaction or expression that we can have in any given situation. Because that's what you are. You are like a computer. And, when you share a network with other computers, let's say you create between you, like this matrix, this world. And each of you, even though you're all tuned into the same network, and even though you're all running the same software, like the same game, in principle, it has the same code. For everyone that downloads the game, it's the same image file, it's the same data in the matrix that everyone has access to. However, every player, every individual player is going to have a unique experience. Every computer will have a unique interpretation of that shared software in that network. And so, in this instance, when it does this, when it has its own interpretation of the software, of the data, and it carves out its own unique perceptions based on its experiences, based on the meanings that were attached. It further changes physically the actual hardware of the computer. It changes the actual way that the physical components of the computer behave. It creates new components and allows new faculties to be developed, new ways of processing information to develop, new ways of managing information to develop. And you might even decorate one's computer. You can stylize it, make it seem different. But ultimately, they're all connected on the same network, same software, different outcomes, and uniquely evolving computers. Which is kind of what we are. We are these constructs. And it's through the mirrors of others and through the impressions we receive when we look into those mirrors that we come to find expression, and we come to see ourselves looking back every time. In everything else, we see ourselves, and then we give the world back to itself when we act. And that's how it goes. You're a mirror or a computer. You take in the information from the world, but you are further identifying and further enriching the experience of your software, of your journey, whatever software you're running, through networking with others, through sharing a communication and a dialogue with others. It changes how you interpret the software and the experience of life that you have, and that changes how the hardware is affected. So I believe that really, if you get past the nitty-gritties, if you get past the fact that we all translate the same data in different ways, and if you get past how people stylize their PCs, private computers, and you focus on the fact that it's all using the same information and it's all networked, suddenly you've got the idea in your head of what's going on. You've got the idea that we're all really one big system, one big network. And though it does serve a point to develop our individual sets of software in different ways, and though there is a point to stylizing the computer and showing how unique we each are in our image, despite the image, despite the narrative of the software, all there is unity. All there is information. All there is comparison, evaluation, and definition, interpretation, translation, ones and zeros, and chains of ones and zeros, intertwining around endless other chains of ones and zeros, all entering and all being closed off, whichever what way, and all creating various gateways of reality, various experiences and moments, situations, things to occur, while other possibilities are kept omitted from manifesting. Because in a lot of ways, It is like it's binary, and there is, I sense, a lot of the time, if not all the time, an underlining set of mechanisms and an underlining CPU that the whole entire network shares. Despite the different software, despite the evolution of the hardware, despite the style, the CPU links all the computers together. It's what facilitates the network. Everything is just connected and networked by virtue of the fact that they share the same CPU. So in a sense, you could say the world, the society, the people in it, all creatures in it, it's really like one computer. And there are many different compartments, many different bits and pieces and cords and nodes and whatnot that come together to form something greater. And you've got many different, partitions that make a computer, many different parts that come together, and each serves a purpose, plays a role within the whole, but when it all operates together, it creates one united and one singular outcome, which is the current page on your screen and seeing this right now, talking. Just like the organisms, within your body. And you're an organism, made up of organisms, made up of organisms. And each organ is an organism. It's your heart and your lungs and your intestines and your bladder and your kidneys and all this. They're organisms, and they've got their own psychology and their own energy to them. Probably their own life. And they've got a purpose. Within the whole, they each have a role that they play. And if you take the microscope further, you'll see that there are compounds, molecules, atoms, particles. You can go further down into the crisps and quarks and as far as you can possibly measure. And it's a story of the same thing happening microcosmically, macrocosmically, all the way in and out. It's a lot of little things that are seemingly separate and individual unto themselves that come together and form a greater union. And there is some kind of system, an invisible hand, an invisible system that guides these things to work together, like consciousness. And that's one way of seeing it, really, is that life itself is software. The world, all of its parts, animate and non-animate, alike. Well, maybe not alike, because there's a difference between that which observes and that which does not. We are all players, living in the same computer, living in the same world, living in the same realm of possibility, of binary gateways. And each player has its own unique course mapped out. Everyone plays the game differently, and they earn different outcomes. But at the end of the day, when you quit the game, you can just start again in a different profile. Or you can keep your old profile, keep all your upgrades from previous game playing and all the trophies that you've earned. Keep the caliber score rating that you've been earning through all your different gameplays, and you can come back under a different avatar, under a different character, but same username. And that's how I see it. We're in a computer. This is software. It's a game. The characters are forever changing, but the users are all united and all the same. And there are new users that enter, I believe. And we keep coming back and playing until finally we move beyond the computer to the point where we can actually physically and metaphysically control the game and create the rules of the game and make the game from the outside in, but not really from the outside. Anyway, I'm just ranting now. That's enough of my ranting.